Chakravarthy, managing partner at Open Cliff Partners. We're a product advisory and consulting firm. As a woman who's spent over 25 years in tech, product, and leadership in corporate roles, I have crossed paths with inspiring women who walk the talk, have an abundance mindset, and have helped shape my career journey. My hope is, through my actions while in corporate roles, and now in this chapter of my professional life, that I give back and pay it forward. There's plenty of research that shows that women don't have enough women role models to look up to learn from, and to emulate. And very few women leaders who break the glass ceiling, be it in corporate, entrepreneurial, or other arenas, actually support other women in terms of being a champion, being a sponsor, or advocate to other women, and worse, see them as competition. The inspiration for this podcast series is to show women in tech, product, and leadership who inspire, who actually help, and are positive influences to those who have the good fortune to be in their orbits, lifting as they climb. Today, I'm super excited to host Rohini Chakravarthy. Rohini is managing partner of NewBuild Venture Capital, an early stage VC focused on enterprise supply chain companies. She's a VC with over 20 years of investing experience and has worked with early stage startups on product market fit, category creation, team selection, and scaling. She's been a board member on dozens of portfolio company boards and has nurtured companies from formation through strategic partnerships and successful IPOs and acquisitions. Not only is Rohini a woman in VC, but she's also my cousin through marriage, and I'm grateful for our personal and professional relationship. Rohini, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Smita. As am I. Really wonderful to know you both personally and at work, and really proud of all the things you've accomplished. So thanks for having me.
It's a mutual admiration thing going on right here. Thank you so much. All right, so let's dive right in. I have a few questions. We can take it in whatever direction you want. So let's start with something that I think all of us, could use a reminder of. What are some key leadership lessons you live by?
Thank you. Yeah, we're starting sort of early here in California. First thing in the morning, just a reminder on being very intentional. I think that's the key leadership lesson, which is, as leaders at work, as well as just your personal life, going through how whatever the vision you have for your personal life, every day is different. And I think it's really important for people to just start the day with what is my priority for the day today. And it just takes a combination of both vision, and flexibility. So you need to plan ahead, but also be flexible for whatever is to come. So I think that's number one. Consistency takes both planning and flexibility. And then to that point, I think the biggest leadership lesson I have followed is it really does matter to people how you show up, the intentionality. But when you come in as a leader into any of these spaces, whatever has happened before this, the people who you're talking to today don't have that context. So when you change from one context to the other, it's really important to separate sort of what you were doing versus what your audience was doing, and be able to kind of put yourself in the shoes of that audience. So whether it is you as a CEO coming in, you might have gone and talked to the board in the morning, and whatever has happened with that's a different context and a different type of conversation than what you have with your reports. Or if you are talking to a customer, it's different than if you're talking to an intern who's coming through. So a good leader has to be able to sort of be able to zoom in and zoom out and put themselves in the shoes of whatever audience that is. So I think that's a second leadership lesson, that context switching and being able to do that. And then the third, I think, is, have that vision. Don't be afraid to portray that vision. Don't be afraid if not everybody shares that vision. So a lot of times I've asked the question, the interview question, like, what do you know to be right that a lot of people believe to be wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or just doesn't matter. Like, what do you know? What drives you? And to be able to hold on to that vision. So I think you have to believe that vision really personally to be able to convince other people to follow you and so on. So
Yeah,
maybe those are the three. So the
that's
intentionality,
amazing.
being able to have that empathy for your audience, and then third, just being able to lead with a vision where you don't have to be right all the time, but you have a few things that you know are right. And so those are the things I would
I love
argue as
I
things.
love each of them. I love each of them for different reasons, and I know personally the third one has we have shared that the
Hmm.
third one where many times the belief in the vision we have for ourselves.
Yep.
Not everybody may see that,
Hmm.
but it's what's the driving force for what we want to do.
Yep.
And to remind yourself and to be to recommit to that vision, I think is super important. Otherwise, it's very easy to give up. Give up is very easy.
Yep.
So thank you for the reminder, for the countless calls where you've actually reminded me about what my vision was for myself. So thank you for that. Okay.
Absolutely. And I think it actually, like, the I think that vision, unearthing what people's vision is, that's actually a core part of venture investing, to be honest. Like, we thrive on origin stories. Like, when I walk into a room, many times I'm walking into a room where I'm meeting an entrepreneur for the first time. I just don't know them. But it's really important, before we talk about product, before we talk about whatever problem they're solving, it's really important to understand what drives them and what is the vision they have for themselves. What is their origin story? Why are they doing something? Before you even jump into sort of what are they doing and how can you help them on that journey.
Yeah.
So I do think leadership starts with understanding your own vision and being able to articulate it. So the clearer you are with articulating what you believe to be true, the easier it is for other people to
Yeah.
follow you as a leader. Yeah.
Absolutely. Recently I was at this company that I'm advising. I was at their summit, like a conference that they had for their customers and partners. And the CEO, like as he was wrapping up the summit, talked about why he does what he does. This is a company in life sciences.
Mhm.
And it was such a genuine, authentic story
Mhm.
that he actually broke down in front of this audience of over 100 people.
Mhm.
And I think because of that authenticity, because of that origin story, that's that driving force for what he's doing. I think his customers and partners love him even more because of that. It
Mhm.
takes a very, very strong leader to be vulnerable like that in front of this large audience.
Absolutely.
um, I'm not, no way am I suggesting that everyone needs to break down in front of an audience,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah,
it was so
yeah,
genuine
yeah.
that it was not orchestrated or planned. It
Yeah.
just happened because that's how
No, it's a
genuine.
moment of connection. Yeah, it's a moment of
Correct.
connection. And it is okay to have emotions at work. It's okay to have the full range of emotions. Like, I think, we talk about humor at work. Like, it's
Yes,
easier to work if you're laughing along and singing along with people. But you should also be open to other uncomfortable emotions,
yeah,
something where, and not just about work. Like, people
yeah,
bring the whole person to work, and, whatever problem they might be having, or actually many times, if the problem is known, it's actually easier to deal with the emotion of it.
exactly.
Sometimes, many times, the problems are unknown, right? And there's somebody struggling with something, and that's a deeper, like, so vulnerability
Yeah.
is definitely an important part of it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. So that resonates. So actually, before we get into some of the other questions,
Yeah.
tell me a little bit more about this origin story. Like,
Yeah.
what you've been a force to reckon with in VC, in the VC world, in
Thank you.
as a general partner in different companies, and now on your own. So, and I know before this, you also had your own venture. So you've been an entrepreneur in different contexts.
Sure.
So tell me, when you look at companies to invest in,
Yeah.
I know you have your investment thesis on your website and so on, but what what are the few traits that really resonate with you to say, hey, I want to be part of this
Yeah.
entrepreneur's journey?
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's a great question. I think so. My journey into venture itself was, I was a technical leader. So I grew up in India. I was an electrical engineer by training. Went to IIT Madras, and that was. We can talk about that later in the program, where I
Sure.
was one of 10 women in a class of 280. So you sort of figure out that you have to kind of work. Within you have to kind of play the hand you're dealt, right? And I think in many ways it was a very positive environment, but it was also challenging to be a woman in a super minority, let's say. um, but and then I came to the US as a grad student. I did a master's in electrical engineering. I worked in the Valley for a few years, and then went to business school. And I started in venture as an associate right out of business school. So I started, kind of at more of traditional way of starting in venture, except that I had more of a technical background than a normal associate might start, in venture. And so my origin story, so I kind of leaned into that technical background that I had, and even now 20 plus years later, I still kind of think of myself as a technical product market investor. So what excites me is, I feel like I see some patterns now that I've been investing over 3 venture cycles. I see patterns, and they're not quite exactly the same. It sort of rhymes, doesn't repeat, right? Where if you see the technology innovation curves, they're sort of additive to each other. So some things have replaced, right? So nobody stacks and racks servers anymore. Everybody's gone to the cloud. But like AI is it kind of adds on to the cloud rail. Or if you look at like connected devices like robotics or mobile devices, they sort of got bolstered by the cloud. So I do think that there are some patterns on how certain things are replacement technologies and certain other things are additive technologies. So I kind of like to play with that technology product market dynamic and this industry structure approach. Um, so my initial investing career, I invested in networking, in Wi-Fi. These were all things that I kind of knew, and actually spent a lot of time in standards bodies and things like that.
Mm.
um, and beyond that, I've had a more institutional venture profile. So I was at NEA for almost 9 years, and then went to NGP Capital. So my first stint was at Intel Capital. That's where I started my venture career. And then at NGP, I kind of invested around um, the connection of the network, the 5G network, into data and cloud and so on. So that there's a technical thesis that runs through. I still kind of
Yeah.
enjoy finding that technical product market fit. But within that, there is a pattern to how companies get to be big, as in there is a, I call it category creation. You said that in the introduction as well, right? Where which is, if you see all of the new value that has been created in software, most often it's a company that can take up a white space that just exists, and it's not necessarily replacing an older technology, but it actually just opens up a new market. And these markets can be consumer markets, which are very, very large, but it can also be enterprise markets. And then in my case, I like the enterprise market thesis, right? So part of it is just being able to see that category or white space that not everybody is seeing right now. So I kind of like to invest in entrepreneurs who have that leadership gene that we just talked about, right? Which is they're able to see it, and clearly it's not widely known, otherwise it would already be a big market.
Yes,
Right?
yes,
so,
yes.
so how do you kind of invest in a market of a 0 billion, right? That's what we joke around, that's a
Yeah.
market of
Yeah.
0 billion. So that's one part of the origin story. And my own view on sort of what does it take to take down that origin, that vision that you have identified, is to kind of to know that most people are like, you start with this, but most people cannot accomplish that vision just all on their own, right? This is the
Yep.
whole idea
Absolutely.
of
Yep.
this. So you have to believe in this hero's journey, that you start this journey, and a critical component of it is that you find co-travelers, mentors along the way, and then you come back a changed person, right? So like you come back to this home state, but you know that hero's journey has taken you through that. And so whether a first time entrepreneur, hopefully you can be a mentor. A second time entrepreneur, like you kind of want to see what have they learned from their previous journey, like what did they do. So yesterday I was talking to somebody who had a sort of a bad experience working with a VC before, right? And they were like, well, the person and they worked with was all about control, and like eventually they got pushed out of some organization. And sometimes it's, you sort of have to like acknowledge and honor it. It's not right or wrong. People have had
Yep.
those experiences,
Yep.
right? And so the question is, can you work from there to say, okay, this is going to be a different experience the next time around you're building a company. So even if
Yeah.
you like the idea, the people, so the origin story is made up of all of those components. There's a product component, there is a market component, there's a team component, and
Absolutely.
those are the three parts of it, because there are no financials yet typically when I start investing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so for me, like if I just did that analysis on my own origin story and journey, it is sort of the immigrant journey, right? Technical background, I sort of came here not knowing, I came for grad school but didn't know the rest of the career plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
So whatever has happened has kind of been like a discovery for myself as well, and it's been
Yeah.
wonderful, right? So I think it is, I'm still going through that journey. And the market journey has been wonderful because like when I showed up here in the 90s, networking was the AI of the 90s. And so
Yeah.
I've lived through sort of like the internet boom, mobile boom,
Yeah.
cloud boom, now the AI boom. So it's like really been marvelous because nobody knew any of these markets existed, and I
Yeah.
didn't either. So, and then team wise, I've been part of, multiple fantastic organizations. Like um, I really learned from sort of the best in terms of how to work with within venture with companies, and that has been a joyful experience at work, but also personally as well. Like I'm married to a classmate, like so I've been sort of I've really kind of been very involved in the IIT Madras crowd. I'm on the board of the MIT Club
Mhm.
of Northern California. So I've kind of used those communities as have and a lot of women's organizations. So I was, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But I find those communities sort of energy boosting
Yeah.
because I think most people, especially startup people, they have their work journeys, and the work journeys involve very few people. You'll see a startup team, 5% team, 10% team. But if you look at their network and the community that supports them, that could be 100 people, right?
Right.
And so we all have to kind of invest in those things. And that's been and so when I talk to people, I kind of want to find out what's their product vision, what's the market they're seeing that nobody else is seeing. And
Mhm.
then, what do they bring to bear? Like, what is their natural community? Like, who would support them? Um, with or without other people believe, like who's the first follower for this person and
Right.
how would they hire, like, and you could be a very young person and you're hiring your peers, like, so it
Right.
doesn't have to be hierarchical. But I just kind of want to start with like the origin story helps me ground it in their context, and I live in their context.
Right. Right. That makes a lot of sense. That's actually amazing because um like you said, before any financial terms are exchanged or discussed, it's important to know that, hey, I'm taking a bet on you and I need to know who you are and what drives you before I bring out the checkbook and write you a check
Yes,
and invest. So
absolutely. Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think that actually leads us to like a very important question, which is what are all the ways you leverage your success
Mhm.
to help other women in their careers? You're an immigrant, I'm an immigrant. I never thought of myself as a woman of color.
Mhm.
That's just the category that we have, I suppose, here in the United States. But despite all of that, you've had tremendous success in your career, and not to mention that you're super smart. But
Thank you.
so, so tell me all the different ways in which you've leveraged your success to help other women in their careers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think so. It's not kind of lost on me. Like, so when you first start out on your career journey, you're kind of scraping by. Nobody knows anything,
Yeah.
right? So you're trying to make your way through the world and trying to figure out what's going on. I would say that compared to my undergrad experience or even my master's graduate school experience, my business school experience was actually slightly different, right? Because we were now 35% women at that time already, right? It's
Hmm.
more normal. Like, I think, so I pretty early on, I had this idea that you once you get past sort of a critical it's like a critical point where you say it's about 20-25% women, um, then you can be more normal. Like, you can have somebody who's loud, somebody who is quiet, somebody who is like right a lot, somebody who's wrong a lot. Like, you'll be normal. You don't represent all women. Like,
Yeah.
when you are an outsider, or you're like a woman of color, like I've got my woman of color and you got so there is, it distorts in many ways, including in the way that you mentioned early on, which is, if an organization has this expectation, okay, I need to have one woman on my exec team, then it sets up the second woman in competition to the first woman, right? Because,
The
like, you
system
already
kind
have
of.
your one woman on your exec team, like,
Yeah.
so it kind of corners women to sort of protect their turf, because there is like this unwritten ethos that if I help somebody else, then thankfully I wasn't, so in business school that was not the way. Like, we were 30% already. And then Intercapital in general, interestingly, did have quite a few very strong women investors, and leaders. So it wasn't as abnormal as maybe some other areas. And then also the other thing that helped at Intercapital was that there was a process. So when we won't talk too much about VC today. Like, there is this question of investment committees
Mm-hmm.
versus partnerships, right?
Mm-hmm.
Organizationally, actually, partnerships can be more tricky than investment committees, because when you have an investment committee, especially as a young person, you sort of figure out what's the right way to do the diligence, do the work, what's the process, and if you can master that process, you can be good, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in many times in a partnership, it becomes much more about power dynamics, like who's the senior partner, like, you wait for them to tell you what they think, and then that's sort of what's what's
What's
the
the
what's
result?
the
Yeah, yeah,
what
yeah.
is the consensus, because we are working in areas that are filled with ambiguity, right? So there isn't a right answer. You want to see things that other people are not seeing, and how do you communicate that this is important?
Yeah.
So I feel like I've benefited from going through organizations, one where um, even when it was, when you were not sort of when you were in a minority, there was some standard of care, or some
Yeah.
standard process. And then at NEA, I think it was a very supportive partnership, right? So there, and we'll kind of talk about a number of those things on how there is, not just for women, but basically, like, you can build more collegial partnerships versus not, and they really spend some time thinking about that. um, but along that way, so I started to see that, my early investments, there were hardly any women founders that I was backing. Like, most of the people that I was backing were all male founding teams, and like, especially in the early 2000s and so on. So it's not like, even today, like, it's 2% of venture capital goes
Yeah.
into
To
all
women
all
founders. Yeah.
women teams. Only 18% have even one woman on the founding team. So
Yeah.
so, but go back 20 years, I think, and this it was, and so, but I realized that it's very hard to ask women to be the flag bearers for all women. Like, if somebody said, okay, you're a woman, you go invest in women founded companies. Okay. So that is a very hard ask to make. If you are a
Yeah.
woman to say, oh, you go hire more women, that's a very hard, it has to be sort of an all org decision. So I kind of decided that, women founded teams was not going to be my filter, right? My filter was going to be thematic work, market focused,
Yep.
right? And then, I would love to see more women founders, and then I had to kind of figure out, okay, how do I actually give back? That is not necessarily about like it won't be a filter for the companies I choose to work with, but
Yeah.
I still have to kind of give back to increase this population or pipeline of women that, and just give back and then see where it goes. Like, so pretty early on, I was chair of the Thai Women's Forum. And
Hmm.
so I chaired that for 6 years, while I was at, no, maybe 4 years when I was at NEA, so all blurring now. Um, but we kind of redid that model, because like you were saying, there's a lot of research on, there's actually a lot of research on having a personal board of directors or people outside of work who support you, that helps you a lot. So we decided to provide that for CEOs. So we had a number of women founders and CEOs, various parts of the journey, who could come in and talk, and it was a cohort, right? So we said we'll just repeat it. You meet the same people over the course of a year, like 6 times over the course of a year. We did it at lunchtime because many times it's really hard for women with young families to go out in the evenings and weekends. So we really thought through that, and it was a cohort of about 12 to 15 people. Many of those people are still in touch. So this is like from now 13 years ago.
Hmm.
um, so that was one. And then the other thing that I also got involved with, there are two fantastic organizations, Netri, which I think you know about, one of my friends, Maithili Sankaran, she started it, and I was part of the founding circle, and they have really done a fantastic job organizing for South Asian professionals. So how, all the way from early career to getting onto boards, like what is that
Hmm.
path? And so Maithili and Chitra Nayak and Shruti Ramaswamy, they're the founders of that organization. So I was a founding circle member, and then I also invested in their initial fund, right? And
Hmm.
have sort of made lots of friends through that. And and they have experimented with a lot of different formats.
Yeah.
So again, it's like not about, so how do I align myself with something that's working and help, rather than like, don't have to be to start the thing.
Right.
Similarly, I support a group called firstboard.io, which was started by one of my friends, Rita Scroggin. Um, and that has also kind of grown. It's all about getting women on boards. And I joined as a founding supporter there as well. So that was through NGP. Like, so we sponsored them through NGP. I've been, supporting them through NewBuild. And then I think finally the one that I've been most thrilled about is with IIT Madras Foundation. We launched this sort of an endowment. It became an endowment, but basically this initiative called Women Leading IITM. And
Mm.
the idea was just to hear from people on the ground on what are the problems they're facing, like, and how do you kind of resolve this. And among alumni, like, so just for context, the IITM Foundation this is now the 10th anniversary. We've raised over $45 million for
Wow.
IIT Madras through this alumni initiative. And for a lot of the alumni, they want to give back to IITM, either for sort of scholarships or distressed situations where they could help with,
Yeah.
financial distress, especially. But also about, like, everybody acknowledges that can be a tough environment for women. So how do we go about like making this a little easier? So we did like a whole survey on like what could help, and there is a women's group on campus with some professors. We ended up, essentially, interestingly, over COVID, it just formed itself, where, 50% of the women in the group, 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 50% of the women in the we found out that, if you're a PhD student at IIT Madras, you get a stipend for 4 years,
Hmm.
but you have 7 years to complete your PhD. And they, since pandemic, they've expanded it to 5 years of stipend, but you have further time to. So we found that a lot of women. It's the same for men or women, but the
Hmm.
impact on women was much much harsher. Because PhD students, they're going through this program. Many times they're getting married, sometimes they have a kid, they're like sometimes two kids by the time they finish their
Yeah.
PhD. Like, you're in your 20s, and it's a very angsty time. You get to 4 years and you've not completed your PhD and you're losing your
Yeah.
stipend. It can
Yeah.
be enormously stressful, right?
Hmm.
And so we decided to just match that stipend. And
Oh, that's awesome.
so essentially you kind of get another year or 6 months to kind of finish up what you're doing. And so far we've basically supported 116
That's
PhDs,
fantastic.
right? So it's sort of like, the how do you keep that pipeline intact? These are all people who've already gone through a level of qualification. So
Yeah.
I've kind of taken the, maybe still the startup approach of, this is not big scale. Like, I like early initiatives, um, but align yourself with kind of people, with the founders who are starting these initiatives. And in the case of the IITM Foundation, there was like a very supportive alumni group to do something new.
Yeah.
And yeah, so then we have an endowment for that, so we can support people each year.
That's fantastic.
So those are some of the things, yeah. But and with New Build, by the way, maybe that's the last one. Um, Again, I think it's really hard for us to have a first filter that says, I want to invest in women's
Yeah.
lead.
Yeah.
But we have given ourselves a sort of a portfolio level goal, right? Which is, um, we want to invest in between 15 and 20 companies for this first fund. We want half of them to have a woman on the founding team. It doesn't, it
That's
doesn't,
amazing.
we work in very technical areas. So we want to invest in the best companies, but we think we can actually be intentional about finding that as well. So far, so good, right? And where we are at 9 companies, 4 of them have women founders.
Almost at that statistic. Yeah.
Almost there. So yeah, so we'll see. Like, I think I kind of want to bring it back to the VC world as well. But sort of, we kind of want to work with the world as it exists, and then how do you move the ball forward from there?
Yeah.
That's
No,
been.
I love that approach. I love that approach because, if you when I think back on my corporate career, I think if someone gave me a goal like you have to have 50% women on your team,
How would you go about doing it?
that would be great if it organically happened that way.
Yeah.
But to kind of like meet a certain metric, if you went hiring, I don't think as a manager I would like it, nor would, like, I don't think any woman
Yeah.
wants to claim a seat at the table she's supposed to be at
Mhm.
just to fill a statistic.
A quota. No, nobody
A
wants.
quota,
Nobody wants
right?
that.
They
It
get
taints everybody.
qualified.
Yeah, it taints everybody. Yeah, I think that is true. I would say that it's also very important that, you know clearly you can only have one thing as a, the first priority has to be the first priority. Like, so you have to figure out what is your first priority,
Yeah.
like, right? And if your first priority is that you have to hire a team that has 50% women, you'll have to sort of make that, when you come up against any conflicts, you sort of have to, move towards that. Has to be a first priority.
Yep.
I think that is a very hard burden to put on people. So I do think that, um, in our case, our first priority is we want to build a portfolio that is thematically, we want to work in enterprise supply chain. We want to invest in early stage companies, help them on product market fit. That's the first priority is early stage thematic investing.
Yeah.
And you can sort of be good actors and be different. And so we do like a women in supply chain summit
Yeah.
every year. I think you know about that, and you've
Yep.
been on it. So we do things that do feed that. So we want to build the network. We want to, make our own luck in terms of finding great women leaders. um, but we don't make that a filter. So that's not, we're not raising
That
a point.
makes that makes a lot of sense, and I think that's a an intentional but not like sort of like a hard requirement.
Yeah,
I really like that approach because then the people you do invest in
yeah,
know that they you invested in them a because they thematically fit into your investment thesis, and by the way, they're going to be supported
yeah,
all the way through,
yeah,
because there's this intentionality about having like
yeah,
whatever 50% of your portfolio being having at least a founding woman,
yeah,
right? So
yeah. Yeah, and I think there are like now there are many more programs now. I think in the last uh, several years there's been much more support. So I do think that people are finding these lanes, like sub lanes, right,
yeah.
which is directionally this is where we are headed. We want to be more inclusive. And to me, actually, the women entrepreneurs thing, I kind of liken it to the immigrant entrepreneur um, movement, if you will, right?
Hmm.
So because if you look back, I as I mentioned, I worked with Thai Women's Forum briefly, but the way Thai was formed in the 80s, it was pretty normal for people to say, well, you speak funny, like you're not
Yeah.
presentable. I'm not sure customers would buy from you.
Right.
So initially, people would dismiss like immigrant entrepreneurs, Indian entrepreneurs. And then eventually it was like, oh, maybe you guys have some good technical chops. Like, okay, you can be the CTO. Let me get like
Yeah.
a normal, you like
Yes.
a non-immigrant, I guess coded for white guy, white man here to be the CEO. This was true in the 80s and and maybe even the 90s.
Sure.
Um, but fast forward to now, like 50 plus percent of the unicorns have immigrant entrepreneurs, and most of them, a lot of the founders expect to stay on as CEO, and it's
Yeah.
not controversial. Like,
Yeah.
right? I think that's sort of where we are with kind of women being in charge as well, right?
Yeah.
Where it was sort of like this. Okay, but we have like the one woman. Like now, when things get serious, let's give it to the guy. I think we've kind of gone through that stage
Yeah.
over the past 15, 20 years. I think we are at a moment now where there is a cutover happening. I think we are getting to that critical point, like I mentioned, in the network, not
Yeah.
as an organization, but in the network where women are serious business actors. Like, so you get asked the same, you're allowed to fail, by the way. Like if you fail,
Yeah.
it's not like all womankind failed, which
Yeah. Of
actually is
course.
very free, which actually is very freeing, right? Because it used to be that if one Indian guy's company went bust, oh, all of these Indians are like, useless.
Like, yeah.
Or you
Yeah.
had like one set of made up numbers. Oh, all immigrants must be liars. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
we
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
go through that phase. Like one Theranos happens, I did taint all women entrepreneurs, right? So I think we've sort of passed through that stage. I hope we are at the on the other side where you get the whole range of human actions and emotions and ethics in women. Hopefully, a little better ethics when women are in charge, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but I do think that we've made this more normal. So
Yeah.
I think we should just help each other, like whether it's
Yeah.
women, men. But in our, I think if we can just give back to our communities and just be supportive and put ourselves into like good spaces,
Yeah.
uh, I think that's the sort of the best way to operate.
Sounds good. No, that was amazing. And I'm sure all the people you've helped are grateful for your help. Not only with how you thoughtfully approach it, but also very intentionally getting involved with different organizations at different for different stages,
Yeah,
which aligns with your values,
yeah,
right? And I think that's super critical to like align. You have to align yourself with organizations if it's not your own,
yeah.
where the values are aligned.
Yeah.
It cannot be a force fit.
Yeah.
Can't
Exactly.
be a force fit.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So, when you've reached out to others to help you in your career,
Yeah.
what are some of the best ways others have helped you?
Um, I mean, I've benefited a lot from, people sort of looking out for me. And I've told this story a few times, and many times I think the best help is sort of situational awareness. Like, most people, like I think that I included myself even now, many years later in this category, is that most people don't quite know exactly how they fit in the larger picture. You do need friends and mentors. Like, you just need peer help,
Yep.
as well as maybe mentors and sponsors, like you just mentioned, right? And I've benefited from all of the above. um, like, the couple of examples, my first job in VC, I actually wasn't looking for a venture role. Like, I had been very involved in entrepreneurship
Yep.
at MIT, and but one of my friends at MIT, she was the one who basically said, "Hey, I think you would be a good VC. You should apply to Intel Capital." She had worked at Intel before she came to MIT, and
Okay.
she was the one who kind of chased it down and found
Oh, how
the
nice.
hiring manager's name. She's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I heard this gentleman Elliot Swan is coming out to Boston to start an office, so maybe you want to apply." And I actually chased him down, by the way. Like, I after Monica, my friend, introduced me. Um, I said, "Hey, this is the it was a referral." And I think, he hadn't quite started the office yet. He was moving from the West Coast, and so I was the first hire to Intel Capital in Boston. But it was really kind of this happenstance, when somebody referring you, like somebody who had known you for a couple of years, referring you. It was a peer referral, and that's actually how I started the venture journey. Um, and I had a mentor at Intel Capital. When sort of I joined in '99, and within the first year and a half, I saw sort of the boom and the bust, right? Which is like, when we first started, we couldn't put out money fast enough. Like, people were
Yeah.
measured on how many meetings did you take, like all this stuff. And then within a year and a half, it's like, pencils down. The depth of the 2000 crisis. And I benefited from sort of inheriting a lot of companies where, like, we had a round of layoffs and all this stuff happened. And but through that kernel, we said, "Hey, I think there is a platform shift happening from networking." Remember, we had invested in
Yep.
telco, cable, like, we in the '90s. It was the internet build out, right? So
Yep. Yep.
as the internet build out happened, we had invested in a lot of things, that suddenly we saw this shift to wireless, right? And I had a mentor at Intel Capital who hired me into his group. It
Hmm.
was sort of a lateral hire, but again, it was that thing which says, "Hey, you're doing networking, you're fairly technical, but, like, this seems like the exciting technical part. Do you want to come work on
Yeah.
this?" And he's a dear friend of mine, even now, and has invested in my new fund, right? So it's a journey that's now
Full
20
circle.
plus years. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah. And so those were sort of some early career support. um, I met, actually, there was a professor from IIT Madras who had come out,
Mhm.
and they just sent out a lunch invitation. Alumni, do you want to come hang out and talk to this professor? And I went to this lunch, and I sat next to Kitu Koluri, who was,
From NEA, right?
he wasn't at NEA, he was still at Juniper at that time.
Oh, I see. Uh-huh.
And so I was at Intel Capital. We sat at the lunch, this thing, and I kind of introduced myself. And he was like, 7 or 8 years ahead of me. So I had not overlapped at IIT, but through this alumni connection. And then we were chatting, and then he's like, "Well, what do you do?" I said, I've been at Intel Capital a few years. And he said, Interestingly, I'm kind of going into venture." And, so, several months later, that's actually how I ended up at any age, right? So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
one of those things where people have to, like, you have to be in certain spaces and you kind of show up as whoever you are, and you have to trust that the network is also seeing you, and seeing some potential in you, and so on. I think
Yeah.
early career, those were all the things, but I think the latest group now, like, I think we talked about this earlier. It's been kind of an interesting environment to fundraise, and I'm really fortunate to have raised a fund in this environment. Not many people have been able to do that. Like, we were talking to our lawyers. They had 30 funds that have been fundraising. Only two of them have actually closed.
Wow.
So it's been a pretty tough environment for emerging managers.
Mm.
But yeah, so all of the people who are LPs who have supported, those are all, like, everybody gets a gold star.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
Like,
amazing.
we hope to make you proud. Like, so, but it does take belief, being a fund one,
Absolutely.
experienced VC, but first time fund manager, right? And so, mentorship and sponsorship takes many forms.
Yeah. And I think, like, for our audience, I want two key takeaways from that. One is that sponsorship, that's super critical at any stage in your career,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Because that's when they're not just advising you, they're not just your board of advisors, but they're actually enabling that next movement in your career
Right.
for you,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
They're
Yeah.
enabling, opening a door that without you asking for it,
Yes.
right? So that
Yeah.
I think is important. So I
Yeah.
think a lot
Without
of
you
women,
initially asking for it, I think, but once they open the door, you sort of have to, like,
you have to walk in.
you have to
Yeah.
walk in, you have to show up, and,
Yes,
make
absolutely.
them
And
look good.
make them
Yes.
proud.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
And make them proud because they've put their reputation out there for you,
Yeah.
and you have to follow through.
Yeah.
And I think the second big one is, you know, that networking aspect. Um, Even though I've been in the industry as long as, I mean, we've all been in the industry a long time, multiple decades, I think that networking also has to be intentional, and you
Yeah.
have to nurture your network throughout. When you're trying to do something with your network, even when you're not trying to do something with your network,
Yeah.
um, uh, because um, because that's who can support you and enable that next stage for
Yeah.
you, whatever that is, or
I
in
think that's
whatever
a very
venture.
important highlight. I would say that's a very important highlight because, um, I, especially sort of like, being an immigrant, kind of, you know,
Mhm.
I went through college, much of like high school and college, not talking in class. Like, so, like, basically we're not expected to ask questions and all of this stuff, right? So, so for you have to kind of develop your own voice on how you network, right? And the voice I have developed is that, like, I just enjoy being around people. I kind of have like a, sort of an extrovert, not necessarily, not necessarily, I mean, it doesn't have to be a party every time, but I really do enjoy, um, being around people. And most often, if somebody asks me for time for something, I want to say yes, like,
Yeah.
because without sort of necessarily, like, so I do save time on my calendar to do things where they're not necessarily related to, like, something that is, necessarily an urgent work priority, right? So you
Yeah.
have to kind of, like you were saying about the intentional but networking, um, this is where, like, if you want to have people, who are supporting you on your work journey, you really do have to nurture a sort of a semi-work, personal network. And the easiest way is to just enjoy those. I mean, you go for a walk. Like, I've been doing walking meetings all,
Yeah.
for many years, right? You get your
Two for one.
steps in, right? And you chat, like, it's a very, like, and there's a lot of, research actually about walking meetings, because you're on the same side. It doesn't feel like a negotiation. Like,
Yeah.
it's a very collaborative form of, and when you're walking, you're more creative and things like that. So I go for walking meetings multiple times a week with with various people without necessarily an agenda on like what am I getting out
Yeah.
of this or what are they getting out of it. But
Yeah.
if they do have like something that I can help with, um, and I do find like the easiest or like the costless way to help somebody is to just connect them to someone who can help them. Like, I might not be the best person for you to get something from this, but maybe I know someone, or maybe I even know someone who can direct you in the right direction. So
Right.
without wasting time, like, so if I can figure out a way to help someone to save time,
Yeah.
that's like a
And I
I,
think that's a very important way in which you're helping others,
yeah,
women or men or women, it doesn't matter. But that's a huge way in which you're helping others, because not everybody has that network,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, all of us have different networks. Like,
Correct.
I mean, we all have networks,
Yeah.
right? So I think everybody is born with a network. Yes, I mean, some people have harder times and so on, but all of us have a network. The question is how much we invest in the connections and the weights on that
And that
network.
has to be an authentic nurturing. Otherwise, it doesn't. It's very transactional. Otherwise.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yeah, not being transactional is the best. Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. All right. We're almost at the end. So, couple of different topics I have left just for fun.
Yeah.
What's your favorite life lesson quote? And how is that relevant to you in your life?
Um, So I will life lesson quote clearly. So I'll maybe I'll talk about my dad later, a little bit more later. Um, but his life lesson quote is, just because you know how to solve a problem doesn't mean it's your problem to solve.
Hmm.
So
Uh-huh.
yeah, which is, yes. So like it does take in, like, so all of us, we're all problem solvers. We've been trained to attack problems, solve them.
Yep.
But before you jump into solving a problem, take a second and actually know if this is your problem to solve, or should you find the right person to identify it for this thing. Because it is a very layered way of thinking about like how to resolve situations, like, so
Yep.
lots and lots. So I use it all the time. My kids know that by heart.
Mom's not going to solve this one because it's not her problem
Like,
to solve.
that's basically, it's not my problem to solve. It's up to anybody. It's like,
I love that.
I know
I
how to
love
do
that. I
it. I
hadn't
know how to
heard.
make your bed, but I am not making it. It's like,
Exactly. I love that one. Okay.
yeah.
Any book recommendations you have that have helped you stay true to who you are?
Um, Absolutely. Well, I think so. This you're asking about long term or like what's current book recommendations.
Take a
Okay.
pick.
So
Whatever.
I think the one that has been very interesting, like, so as you know, I'm addicted to the Empire podcast, right? But interestingly, the um, we have I'm in a book club, a neighborhood book club, and we read City of Jinns,
Hmm.
which is City of DJINNS. It's William Dalrymple's first book, right? So
Hmm.
he lived in Delhi for a year. It's a travelogue. But it reads like a novel, and it's so interesting because I've been in Delhi quite a bit. I used to go there for vacations when I was in college, and my dad lived there for 6 years. Um, and this is like sort of 90s Delhi, like, so it was his first book, and pre-internet, pre-mobile,
Yeah.
pre-boom, and it's fantastic. It's sort of a history of Delhi,
Oh, that's
all the
awesome.
way from, so it's a seven cities, the story of that. But I really enjoyed it. Like, I don't know whether it has life lessons, but there are life lessons in there too. Like, but I think I really enjoyed the book. It's like a very short read. Highly recommend if people are going to India, or just just if you're a history buff, like I've become increasingly become a history buff. I'm also reading Golden Road's, Dalrymple's most recent book. It's called about the empire of ideas. So how sort of Buddhism spread from India to Southeast Asia, and like all the ideas that went with it. So like it
Mhm.
was not just religion, but also sort of like daily practice,
The
but
way
also
of
ideas
life.
around art and
Yeah,
medicine and architecture, like all those ideas sort of migrated with that. So that's the yeah. So those are my recommendations. Both of them
awesome.
fantastic books. Yeah.
Awesome.
I don't know about business help, but they're
Hey,
fantastic.
life help helps.
Life, life help. Exactly.
Hey, listen,
Yeah.
Rohini, it's thank you so much for being on the show. It's
Absolutely.
obviously, I love you, and so happy to have featured you as a guest. Hopefully, the audience took away a lot of wisdom from this conversation. You're my first woman in VC that I've hosted, so this went longer than I anticipated, but I'm so thankful that we could kind of explore all aspects of it. And for aspiring women in VC, there you have your masterclass. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thanks for having me.